Welcome. You're tuned to the Urban Affairs program. It's time to get up for Urban Perspectives with your host, Pete Rhodes.
Welcome. You're watching Urban Perspectives. This episode and edition is sponsored in part by UCare, the Minnesota Twins, and BMAnetworks.com. I'm your host, Pete Rhodes. Today, we will recognize outstanding contributions in community outreach, publishing, and sustainable buildings. Meet these leading men featuring Henry Crosby, Dale Kurschner, and Ravi Norman here on Urban Perspectives. My first guest is a graduate of the Historical Black College Tuskegee Institute. He is a transformational leader, shall I say, dedicated to youth enrichment, urban health and wellness, and long-term community development. He has served as the area director for the United Negro College Fund and is currently the executive director of Heritage Park YMCA. Please welcome to Urban Perspectives my friend, Henry Crosby. Henry, how you doing?
Phenomenal. How are you?
I love that. Good. Phenomenal.
Yes.
You always have that energy, and I love to see it each and every time. So I'm glad you are here to give us some perspectives, shall I say, on the work that you're doing in our community. So I'll just start out by saying you recently was recognized by the Minnesota Timberwolves and for your work with youth. Now, how important is your position, and how has it allowed you, Henry, to work with youth and families in our communities?
That recognition for the Minnesota Timberwolves was initiated through the Fast Break Foundation. And in our work with the North Community YMCA Youth and Teen Enrichment Center, which is the first of its kind by the YMCA of the Twin Cities, we had an opportunity to, again, do some unique work for youth in the urban core. We had about 18,000 youth that we were trying to serve in a safe and nurturing environment at the YMCA. And the Timberwolves and I began a relationship that allowed us to, again, engage youth so that we could, again, be very supportive in a multitude of ways in helping them to balance their academic as well as their just cultural competency and understanding why we do what we do.
That's so important, how we connect with them young folks and the now generation, as I call them, for what they're going to do in the future. Speaking of which, you've worked extensively with the program Passages of the Rites of Passage Project. Tell us what that is and the purpose of the program and how important it is as well.
The Rites of Passage program is a very, very personal project that I've been involved in since 1999.
Okay.
It's actually founded by the Jack and Jill of America, St. Paul Twin Cities chapter. And we, as a co-founder of that program, we wanted to create a forum where African-American high school seniors could have a chance to partner with mentors and have some real-life discussions about family, consequences, relationships, but most importantly, personal branding. And we've had over 250 young men participate in that program since its inception. And it is a program that's very dear to me because we've had over 90% of our young men actually matriculate through college, both academic and vocationally, and also returning back to society in some very, very positive ways. So I'm truly forever indebted to the young men who've been a part of it because it has helped me to become more humble in understanding that we as men of color in this community must step back and really connect with our young people because they're waiting for us to be a part of their lives. We just have to know how to approach them.
So important. You know, UNCF, an Evening of Stars is airing here again on WCCO. Now, you're a former area director for UNCF. How does the group help to bring the importance of those historically black colleges and universities to this community here in Minnesota?
The organization is constantly reaching out to alumni, many of the people who've matriculated through HBCUs, to again talk about the rich history of the historical black colleges, but also the sacrifices and commitments that have been made to make education possible. I am, again, as you mentioned, a proud graduate of Tuskegee Institute, and I will always be one to say that it changed my life, but as the first in my family to go to college and having this opportunity to be part of an organization that had a national outreach for helping kids of color figure out how to navigate that high level of academic level was very important. So recruiting here from the Twin Cities was a little bit of a challenge, but we have a host of alumni in town, and they're constantly being encouraged to go back and help other young people. I know that there was just a civil rights tour from the Robbinsdale School District, and several school districts took kids down to the Civil Rights Museum, to Howard, to Tuskegee, to Morehouse. And so seeing is believing. So it's a great resource that has a great historical footprint, and it still has a lot of work to do in getting young people involved in education.
Now, you're currently the executive director of YMCA over in Heritage Park. What is special about that center in regards to senior health and wellness in the time we have?
You know, I went from a transition from youth to now the active aging market, and it's been very humbling also. Our aging market is very important. This YMCA initiative is the first of its kind in the country that is focused in a collaborative with Minneapolis Public Housing Authority, Courage Center, Augustana Adult Daycare, and also Augustana Dementia, Alzheimer's, and long-term care facilities. So one of the things that we've learned in chronic disease management is that it has no color, it has no age limit, it has no barriers. And this opportunity has given us a chance to really have real candid conversations with all communities regarding chronic health disease. And many of the medical experts will tell you that one of the first steps in managing any chronic disease is exercise. And exercise for our communities of color is really a great opportunity, and that's what we're providing here for our community. Now,
I know you are also, as I am, a member of the Monitors, and they're celebrating something special this year.
Yes, this is our 60th year of the Monitors. This group is a very esteemed group of African-American men here in the Twin Cities. And as we approach December, we're going to be hosting our 60th anniversary, where we're going to really talk about the history of professional African-American men that have been part of developing this community in many, many ways. And we're just going to celebrate and continue to try to get another 60.
Henry Crosby, thank you so much for being here today.
God bless you. Thank you.
All right. Weekly here on Urban Perspectives, we present shining stars highlighting people, places, and events that contribute to the vibrancy of the urban community. Our shining star this week was named the best female MC in the Twin Cities in 2012. She's performed at the Soundset Festival alongside national acts Kendrick Lamar, Lupe Fiasco, and has opened for Trey Songz and many others. She's a member of the Minnesota Youth Congress, performing since the age of 8. Meet our shining star, Brynne Crockett, better known as Bdot Croc.
My name is Brynne Crockett, also known as Bdot Croc. That is my stage name, and I am a local female MC here in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Started rapping at about the age of 8 with my Uncle Kelsey. He used to have me in the basement just freestyling and battling, and that's kind of how I got started with my cousins. And then it just went from there into like battling people in middle school. I was a tomboy, I hung out with all the boys, so whenever they got a chance, anybody came to school that said they could rap, they would always be like, I got this girl that'll just eat you, like, and that's how I got set up. Don't do me no favors, keep the tips for the waiters. You don't sit at my table, this spot is reserved. I know that is for sure. I'm working on building a label, plus selling out merch. Team Bdot on the shirt, guess I'm branding the city, don't pity the fool. No pity for you, let me show you how real bosses move. Stamp my logo on the crew neck, cause my crew next. Ain't no telling what we'll do next when I be doing sets. Wonder how I ain't blue, yet still collect checks. No checkers, we playing chess, just making my moves best. And yes, it just got real. So tell me how you feel when I'm after the spot like I'm Cruella de Vil. Not worry about a deal. We independent living, just sticking to the vision. If it's there, I'm gonna get it, cause it's real. For real. I work for the YCB, the Minneapolis Youth Congress. So that's, it's like just the board of young people, diverse from all over around the city, that work on getting their voices heard and making that there's no decisions about them without them. What I tell young girls coming up is just to be authentic, be yourself, be true to who you are, and understand that that's a continuous discovery. I don't dress like the average girl. Like, I got this song called Not the Average Girl, and it just speaks out because for so long I was told when I was coming up, like, yo, you would make it way faster if you just put on this dress or you did this or talked about that. And it's like, yeah, I could do that, but would I feel comfortable going to sleep with myself at night? I just tell the young girls that I work with, like, be yourself, whoever that is, and be okay with not knowing who that is right now. My name is Bdot Croc. I am a local female artist out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, and right now you are tuned into Urban Perspectives.
Our next guest is editor-in-chief of the Twin Cities Business, Minnesota's largest producer of business news and analysis. Meet this leading man, Dale Kurschner, on Urban Perspectives next. Welcome back to Urban Perspectives. My next guest has been editor for top magazines including Business Week's, Reuters, Dow Jones, and Gannett. He is a regular on-air contributor for WCCO Radio and the go-to man for insight on Minnesota business trends. Welcome to Urban Perspectives, the editor of the Twin Cities Business Magazine, Dale Kurschner. How you doing, Dale?
Great. How about yourself?
Glad to have you here. You know, you and I, we met over at an after party for one of the plays here.
Yeah,
and,
Motown.
Yeah, for Motown. That was really good, and to get to meet you there was really exciting, and I'm glad you're here with us today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Well, talk to us, Dale. How did you get involved in communication and journalism as a career?
You know, it was high school. My English teacher said, gee, you know, you should probably try to do some work on the student newspaper. And did a couple stories, but I love the ability to go out and meet with people, learn things, and then share it in a story. And that also meant digging into things that people sometimes didn't want you to know. And it was a lot of fun to be kind of that investigative journalist. So that's how I got really at my start, was to dig into things that people sometimes didn't really want dug up.
Inquisitive kind of kid, I would gather.
Yeah.
As the editor of the Twin Cities Business, what is the mission of this monthly magazine? You see it everywhere. It's a great looking magazine. What's its mission?
You know, for anybody who wants to be part of the business scene in Minnesota or know about it, they should read Twin Cities Business. But we really want to talk about what's happening out there that's exciting, people who are doing great things. Also, what's relevant? What do you need to know as a business leader, both today and also what's coming up? And then we look at challenging questions and situations from a socioeconomic standpoint. Our achievement gap in Minneapolis public schools for #1. We also ranked as one of the worst states in the country for hiring our post 9/11 vets. So we explored that. We take a look at those issues because all of those things really do pertain to business.
Yeah, and that, exactly. Now, how important is the business diversity? You pointed out to the gap. How important is that diversity in the development and the growth of a strong business economy right here in our community?
Huge. I mean, I think in some ways it's more important in Minnesota than some people are even aware of. First of all, you look at over 2/3 of our students in Minneapolis public schools are students of color. And then you look at our graduation rate and how bad that is. That's an abundant labor force that we are neglecting. Those are not only humans that we're neglecting, but when you think about our growing labor shortage, we have the situation where if we could just correct that, we would be helping all these people and we'd be having a greater labor situation. We have a labor shortage coming. A lot of people are starting to retire as baby boomers. And for about 15 years, the number of people leaving Minnesota compared with other people in the country moving in has been dropping. And what's made up for it are immigrants and refugees. So on the other side, we have more refugees and more people from other countries living in Minnesota than at any time in recent history. So from an overall diversity standpoint, it's very important for us to figure out how to do better with what we have.
I see. Now, what is the difference between Minneapolis and St. Paul and the business environment? I know there's got to be some difference there in the two cities.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's...
and I'm sure you don't want to point one to the other, but give it to us.
Oh, you know, we have some really interesting companies in St. Paul. Ecolab is doing phenomenally. You know, we have Securian over there. Pearson's is a candy company that has come back. They've doubled in size in the last 2 to 3 years. They bought Bdot honey, so now it's not just salted nut rolls.
One of my favorites.
Bdot honey. So St. Paul is a potential to be a revival, and we've heard from a lot of people who like to invest in commercial real estate that during this boom that we're seeing in Minneapolis, St. Paul may kind of miss out, but the next cycle where there's a lot of building that's going to take place, they're anticipating St. Paul is going to be the place where they're going to start putting up all those cranes and starting to do more because with light rail being over there now and some of the other things, I think St. Paul has a lot of potential to come back. Yeah.
Great city. Now, how would you rate Minnesota's business climate now? And what business area shows strong potential, you think, Dale, for the growth?
Well, we have a great economy because it's so diverse. I mean, we have every industry here, and we have large players. We have more Fortune 500 companies per capita than I think any other state than one. And so we have a lot of strength. we have that labor shortage situation that's happening, but we have a vibrant downtown Minneapolis where a lot of younger talent wants to move here and be part of that. Can we keep them here? That's the question. You know, can we get these really interested, vibrant, smart people to come here and work for 5 to 10 years and then start families and stay like they have historically?
Yeah.
So that's one of our challenges. But overall, the economy is looking good. We do a quarterly economic indicator survey. People are still anticipating hiring more people in the next quarter and investing more in their businesses. So it's looking good.
That's great. Well, I love the magazine, and I understand it's going to be a great issue coming up. We'll leave it as a surprise. People have to go to the website, urbanperspectives.tv, and we'll show them a little image of it. But you're doing a great job over there, and we got to have you back so we can talk more business.
Sounds good.
All
Thanks.
right, Dale Kurschner, thanks so much. Next, my guest will show his leadership style as a mix of strategy management, organization, and execution. Meet Thor Construction's leading man coming up on Urban Perspectives. Our next guest is focused on innovative transformation of construction industry to sustainable building structures. He is the CEO of one of the largest minority-owned businesses in the U.S., Thor Construction, a general contractor with annual revenues over $100 million annually. Welcome to Urban Perspective, Ravi Norman. Ravi, thank you for being here today. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Pete.
Good, good. You know, the company Thor is been doing phenomenal work here in the Twin Cities, and now as you at the helm, what is the history and the goals of Thor Construction moving forward?
Sure. So as you mentioned, we're one of the largest minority-owned businesses in the United States. Owned and founded by our chairman, Richard Copeland. Yeah. We just celebrated our 35th year anniversary at the Urban League on March 11th. Thank you very much. And we really think it's the epitome of the American dream. And we typically identify that in 4 ways: inspiration, aspiration, production, and innovation. Mm-hmm. We like to call it our IAPI model. Yeah. I've been with the organization about 10 years. I spent the first 4 years as the chief financial officer, spent the last 6 as the chief executive officer. And as I think about our goals, I really would break them down into 3 particular areas. Number 1 is legacy. We want to model successful African-American entrepreneurship and job creation. We want to leverage that IAPI model and be able to transfer both financial and human capital to all communities in Minnesota, but in particular communities of color. Second, I would say our goals are around brand. Millennial generation and younger are really not coming into our industry right now, Pete. Right. And I think part of that is because we don't do a really good job of telling the story. I think about this concept of talent shortages in all industries, and I always tell people that you never hear of a shortage of aspiring sports professionals and or music or entertainers.
Exactly.
And that's despite the fact that from a probability standpoint of actually achieving major professional success is a lot like hitting the lottery in terms of odds. So that tells me, though, that they must do a really good job of inspiring and telling the aspirational story. And I think we need to do a better job in our industry, so that's part of our goal. And then finally, we're a private sector business, so we're always going to measure some of our goals with money. We want to be the #1 minority-owned development and construction company in the United States. And we're going to measure that, we think, by a minimum threshold of $500 million in annual revenue.
That's fantastic. Now, you have been looking at a totally unique way, maybe not unique in the marketplace overall, but your focus is on transforming the future construction to sustainable buildings. Yes. What does that mean, and how will it be done without giving away all your secrets?
Sure. So, you know, it's interesting. Sustainability in our industry has kind of been a key word that people like to use. It's often been associated with green or LEED type of efforts. We tend to think of it as it relates to the sequences of innovation, and how do you align the perspective of owners, developers, and users. And so we really see 3 places that happens. Number 1 is what I call initial cost of ownership. That's where most construction companies are, and they're competing on safety, quality, schedule, cost. However, you know, with all the great work that we've been doing there, and we have adopted technological platforms like BIM, we've had off-site prefabrication and modularization. We've been really adopting additive manufacturing, 3D printing. We're only seeing that although it is creating some cost savings relative to labor, the overall impacts to schedule and cost have been more incremental than transformational.
Okay.
So that's led us to the second sequence, I think, of innovation, and that is around what we call total cost of ownership. And then I tell people it's a lot like comparing in the automotive industry around codes, measurements, and intended outcome.
I see.
On a code basis, you have CAFE. In our business, we think it's net zero, and we think it's going to have more compliance and enforcement by probably 2030. The measurement in the auto industry is MPG, miles per gallon. And the consumer has already adopted that into their buying habits, right? My wife, I can give you some anecdotal concept. My wife, when she went to buy her last car, the first attribute was the retail price. The second was miles per gallon. In our industry, we think for net zero, it's going to be EUI, which is energy utilization intensity.
I see.
And then the intended outcome to that, Pete, is going to be how does that impact pro forma and financial statements over the life of the asset based on that energy utilization. And then last, if I can just add, is what the real vanguard in our industry is going to be around data analytics.
Okay.
And we think human resource policy and law changes that are going to allow us to look at systems, technology, processes in the building envelope and in the interior programming, so air quality, lighting, and comfort, and how those things actually impact on a causality basis human health, productivity, and innovation.
A lot of great stuff happening there. So we move ahead with the time that we have, Ravi. Thor Construction has been recognized for hiring minority workers. Now, what are the current employment opportunities you think for skilled individuals in this industry?
So, I always tell people that jobs and hiring are going to be based on how many contracts do you have, because jobs are associated with contracts. So it's kind of a two-part answer to that question, Pete. Number one is, and I want to talk about this in Minnesota because we're in a great expansion in construction over the last 2.5 years. We consider it a boom.
Right.
But 99% of that growth in all construction volume is happening with majority-owned firms. So minority-owned firms are only seeing 1% of the total growth during the boom. And as you know, behaviors in booms are much easier than when it gets contracted and tight. So I would assume those numbers may be even worse. Anecdotally, I want to tell you that Thor Construction is going to do $175 million, give or take, this year, and only 3% of that volume is going to be in the state of Minnesota. Oh. So conversations about capacity and utilization, some of it's capacity, but when you have the capacity, sometimes there's a utilization issue as well. That's important because if you don't have contracts, you can't give jobs, right? And so, at the lower level, we have some jobs at a subcontractor level that are going to create jobs for foremen, create jobs for journeymen, create jobs for apprentices. But we want to be able to create jobs for project managers, project engineers, and superintendents, and we need contracts for that.
Well, I know if anyone's going to do it, you and Richard are going to make it happen.
No question.
We need your support out there for jobs, and we got you.
We appreciate it.
Ravi Norman, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Urban Perspectives. I would like to thank our sponsors, UCare, the Minnesota Twins, BMAnetworks.com, and my guest, Henry Crosby, Dale Kurschner, and Ravi Norman, our shining star, Bdot Croc, and you for getting up with Urban Perspectives. You can visit our website at urbanperspectives.tv for information on guests and where to find links for previous broadcasts, and help us grow by liking our Facebook page. Now, this Saturday on WCCO Channel 4, watch the UNCF Evening of Stars. They support this important event. Now, we'll talk with you again next week, and thank you for joining us. I'm Pete Rhodes. We'll see you then.